It's important to recognize that Darwin's theory came out over 100 years ago, and that scientific theories evolve, just like everything in nature does. Physics, for instance, has evolved tremendously in the course of this century, and yet biologists are still doing neo-Darwinism.
For some years, scientists have been challenging Darwin's basic theory, and the latest evidence only intensifies that challenge. We begin with biologist Elizabeth Sahtouris.
The basic premise of Darwinism is that changes in evolution occur by accident and are then selected by the environment as a kind of template, letting those organisms that have particular accidental changes evolve, live, and reproduce, while other accidents may not be as viable, so that those species die out, or those individuals die, and therefore the species will die out. We, at the same time, have 50 years of laboratory evidence showing scientifically that DNA does not change by accident. If it does, it repairs itself. In other words, our DNA and that of every creature, down to bacteria, are able to sense changes in the environment that demand changes in DNA.
Experimental evidence of what scientists call directed change in DNA was published in the journal Nature in 1988. Lactose-intolerant bacteria were placed in a petri dish where the only food provided was lactose, poison to this type of bacteria. The bacteria could not reproduce without food. According to conventional Darwinian theory, the bacteria should have died, but they didn't. Instead, scientists discovered the bacteria rearranged their own DNA. They did it specifically, consciously, and quickly, making it possible for them to eat the lactose and begin to reproduce. According to the predictions of Darwin's theory, the outcome of DNA rearrangement should have, 1, been random, and 2, taken place over several generations. The experimental evidence did not support either of those predictions. The results of this simple DNA experiment throw conventional Darwinian theory on its ear.
The important thing about DNA is not the chemicals that it's made of. It's the letters and how the letters are arranged. The nucleotides, as they're called, the chemical letters that direct the synthesis of protein, are not in the order that they are because of any chemical bonds between them, any more than the letters in a page in Shakespeare's Hamlet are arranged the way they are because of the chemistry of ink and paper.
Everybody agrees when we talk about inanimate objects like computers that this type of complexity can't come about by some natural means. When we move to a living system, the brain, it's as if the rules of evidence change. And science tells us that this came about by law and chance. To me, that seems illegitimate to switch the rules of evidence in comparable situations simply because one's non-living and one's living. And it's really this that brought the intelligent design movement into being.
The concept of purposeful rearrangement of DNA has caused some scientists to alter their views of evolution.
I've done a 180-degree turn as a scientist. I was taught that consciousness is a late product of evolution in a non-living universe on a non-living planet on which life evolved through accidents, through accidental changes. I don't believe that story anymore. It seems to me now that it's much more plausible to argue that consciousness comes first as a source for material creation, for material evolution. That consciousness and intelligence was there before material evolution began, because I simply cannot make sense of the idea that dumb mud should bootstrap itself into intelligence, or that non-consciousness could bootstrap itself into consciousness.
When scientists use terms like consciousness and intelligent design to explain living systems, it's clear they're taking a new approach to understanding how the life we see around us got here. And if DNA rearranges itself to meet the needs of its environment, does that suggest there's more purpose in evolution than we originally thought?
I do think that's the case. I think there's enough directionality in evolution that it at least raises the question of whether it wasn't set in motion to serve some purpose.
People have been asking for hundreds of years whether the diversity on this earth could be explained reasonably by some natural means. Today, in my opinion, the best evidence is that it cannot.
The important thing to recognize is evolution does not proceed by accident. Darwin was good in thinking up an evolution theory over 100 years ago, but theories change in science, and we've come way beyond Darwin now.
We have come way beyond Darwin, and when we come back, we'll find out why this simple mousetrap challenges the fundamental principle of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution.
Hello! The job market is a competitive place. In today's economy, extra skills mean a better job for you. Speaking English is the skill you need for greater opportunity, more money, and a brighter future. Introducing Hello Channel, an exciting new television channel that teaches English as you watch TV. There's something for everyone, and the more you watch, the faster you'll learn. All you have to do is say hello.
19th century naturalist Charles Darwin developed a theory of evolution that suggests life evolves step by step from simple to complex. But does the evidence support the theory? Do all organisms evolve one step at a time? Or are some systems, like machines, so complex that if any part is missing, nothing works at all? Dr. Michael Behe thinks he has an answer.
In my opinion, the strongest argument against Darwinian evolution is something called irreducible complexity. And it's a fancy phrase, but it stands for something simple. It means you've got a system or a machine or something which has a number of different parts that all have to fit together to work. And a good example of that is a mousetrap. A mousetrap you buy at the store has a spring and a platform and various other parts. And if you take one of them away, the mousetrap doesn't work anymore. And it turns out things like that are big problems for Darwinian evolution because natural selection needs to work on something that has a function, that's doing something. But with an irreducibly complex system, you only get it working when it's essentially put together.
But does nature actually assemble working systems as complex as a mousetrap? As it turns out, nature's machines can be even more complex.
A really startling example of irreducible complexity in the cell that we discovered 25 or so years ago is something called the bacterial flagellum. And the flagellum is quite literally an outboard motor that bacteria use to swim. It's got a propeller that spins around and around. It's got a motor. It's got a drive shaft that hooks the motor to the propeller. It's got a stator which keeps it stationary in the plane of the cell while it spins around. It's got bushing material that allows it to poke up through the cell's membrane. And genetic studies have shown that this little tiny machine requires about 40 different protein parts in order to work. And if you're missing the propeller, if you're missing the stator, if you're missing any one of those 40 parts, then it's not that it works half as well as it used to, it's broken. It just doesn't work at all. And how such a thing could be put together in gradual steps as Darwinian evolution requires is so far unsolved.
Debate over what Michael Behe calls irreducible complexity continues among scientists. But there's no question that his bacterial motors do exist.
These actually exist in bacteria with little discs rotating with ball bearings and stuff and spinning a little tail that drives it forward. That was a real speed up in locomotion. Those high-energy bacteria were able to invade more sluggish bacteria that made their living by fermenting and to exploit them from the inside out in a kind of bacterial colonialism. But eventually, in that whole course of competition and invasion of each other and invention of technology, they stumbled on the idea of building much larger cooperative cells, which are the only other kind of cell ever to evolve on this planet. And you and I are made of them, as is every tree and mouse and bug that you can think of.
To me, this just shows really shows the tremendous complexity beneath what we have really long thought to be the simplicity of life.
In an ecosystem, every part, every species is contributing. In fact, the best life insurance for survival in a rainforest for each species is to give quality output to other species, meaning something of use to them. What we would call waste may be food for another species, it may be building materials for another species, it may be oxygen or carbon dioxide, depending on whether you're a plant or an animal, that's useful to those who breathe those gases. So everything is interplaying with everything else. Everything is contributing to the survival of everything else.
And in my mind, this complexity at the very basis of life bespeaks a design. Something like this could not have come about by the random process, even with natural selection, that Darwinian evolution envisioned.
Every single species in an ecosystem has its part, and we learn that sometimes by taking out one species and finding an entire ecosystem deteriorating. And that makes us aware of how much they are like our own bodies, where you can't remove a single organ and have the whole body function. It's only in concert, all the cells, all the organs together, that we have this awesome complexity and beauty of function.
Complexity and beauty of function appear to be compelling evidence for design in nature. But appearances can be deceiving. At one time, scientists thought that the craters in the moon formed a design that indicated intelligence. Will the concept of irreducible complexity or the directed mutation of DNA also prove to be ill-founded? How can we tell? A mathematician by the name of William Dembski recently developed an objective set of criteria, a test designed to answer that very question. We'll talk to him right after this.
Thanks for watching Hello Channel. Learn the language of the internet, travel, commerce, and diplomacy. Watch Hello Channel and learn English. Do it for yourself.
Dr. William Dembski holds a PhD in mathematics from the University of Chicago and a PhD in philosophy from the University of Illinois at Chicago. He's a recipient of 2 fellowships from the National Science Foundation and the author of several books, including the highly acclaimed, his latest book, Intelligent Design, The Bridge Between Science and Theology. Bill, it's a delight to have you here.
Thank you very
on the
much.
evidence. I am intrigued with this title. In fact, I found this line in your book. I'd like to hear you unpack this single line. You wrote, "Intelligent design is one intelligence determining what another intelligence has done."
Right.
What in the world does that mean?
Well, scientists and inquirers generally are intelligent agents, and in the world there are things that are produced by natural or unintelligent causes, but things that are also produced by intelligent causes. If you look, for instance, at ink on a sheet of paper, natural unintelligent causes can slap the ink there.
Gotcha.
But if you're going to have a Dürer woodcut or a Shakespearean sonnet, that's going to take an intelligence. And so intelligent causes, when they inquire in the world, they'll say, oh, this is the result of an intelligence, this is the result of chance, natural processes, or for all we know, it's the result of these unintelligent causes.
So you're moving from the realm of philosophy into mathematics when you come up with, what is this, a theory of information that you design. Explain that.
Design, I think historically, has been an intuition. When people have attributed design, often it's been that they've said, oh, well, it's a common sense intuition that something is designed. What we want to do is we want to nail it down. We want to say that when we attribute design, that we can do it reliably, that there are empirical criteria for doing it. And that's what we have now. We've got some criteria for detecting design. And what's crucial there is these are joint criteria. One is complexity, the other is specification. And these are big words, and it may seem.
Can you
somewhat
break those
complicated,
down a little?
But I think a way of breaking it down is really to look at the movie Contact, which came out summer of '97. I think
All right.
there's a key instance in this movie which I think illustrates this beautifully. In that movie, you've got these SETI researchers, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They're astronomers. They're looking for signs of intelligence from outer space. They've got their radio observatories out there monitoring signals. And what happens? There's a key instance in the movie where contact is established, where they know that they're in the presence of an intelligence. And what is that signal? Well, it's a long sequence of prime numbers. Prime numbers are numbers divisible only by themselves and 1. So it's 2, 3, 5, 7, not 9 because that's 3 times 3, 11, and so on,
Gotcha,
all the way up
gotcha.
to 101.
Okay.
That sequence comes in, and they say, you know, this isn't noise, this has structure, okay? So there's a clear design inference that's drawn. So you've got a lot of stuff, a lot of numbers coming in. That's complexity. There's also a pattern. It's an objectively given pattern. You know, if they just gotten, if somebody, if it was just coin flipping that had come in from outer space, you know, random sequences of zeros and ones, there would have been complexity there, but would not have nailed it down for them that there was any intelligence. So you need, in addition to the complexity, there's got to be that pattern. But you also need the complexity, because what if just, you know, 3 prime numbers had come in, 2, 3, 5, end of story. Well, you know, you're not going to contact the New York Times science editor and say, aliens have mastered the first 3 prime numbers, you know, we've nailed it down, because that's just too little. You need complexity and you need the pattern. Once you've got that, then you've nailed it down. So we've got a reliable, empirically based criterion for detecting design, and then the question is, well, what happens when we start applying that in various special sciences, in biology, to Michael Behe's irreducibly complex systems? And it turns out that it's giving us positive evidence of design there.
Okay, if it's serious research, then might we conclude scientists by the droves are embracing intelligent design?
Well, they're willing to do design as long as the big G is not implicated, the big G being God.
All right.
As long as, you know, the design that's there can be attributed to something other than some sort of transcendence, they're comfortable with it.
Well, how could it be transferred to anything else but the big G?
Well, that's, you know, there aren't too many options. You know, I mean, you have something like Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the genetic code with James Watson, who's going to say, look, life is just too improbable to have happened here on Earth, so it had to be seeded from outer space, you know, by extraterrestrials. You know, so the design problem is pushed one step further back, but where did these extraterrestrials come from? You know, well, maybe there's some other place in the universe where they could have evolved more rapidly, more, you know, with greater success than they could here. But that just pushes the problem back.
A moment ago, you mentioned once we determine that there is design, so you are not ipso facto, you are not automatically determining design.
No.
That's not the presupposition you bring to the evidence, the object.
That's right. I mean, what I've done is laid out a formal mathematical apparatus for detecting design. Now, the question is, when we apply that apparatus to biology or to cosmology, it's an open possibility, you know, that there's no design there, that apparatus doesn't detect design. It appears that it is, but it's a separate question, the theory from the application.
What kind of effect do you anticipate intelligent design will have on Darwinian naturalism?
The fundamental insight of Darwin's theory, the mutation selection mechanism or variation selection mechanism, that will still have a valid place, but it's not going to be the whole show, and in fact, it's probably going to have a very small, be a very small part of trying to account for biological complexity. So I think its scope is going to be radically constricted once intelligent design takes off, because when it comes to biological complexity, my view is that biology is just chock full of design. You know, you do have certain natural processes, things where Darwinian mechanisms have an influence, but design is overwhelmingly the testimony of biology.
Bill Dembski, fascinating material. Intelligent design, the bridge between science and theology. Thank you very much for being on The Evidence. What do you think? Let us know your opinion. For more information on intelligent design, visit our website. You can find us online, www.theevidence.org. We'll be back in just a moment with some concluding thoughts.
English and have fun.
I did something you mentioned in our last class. I drew pictures with my 5-year-old last night. Who knew she had so much to say?
I didn't understand the assignment.
I did the other thing you said. You know, get down on their level, make eye contact.
And then we just walked around the park, past the school, then we had to go by Bobby Felden's house.
I had no idea my son wanted to play the piano.
Okay, slow down. I got park, school, talk, piano. What was the other thing?
I'll be honest, at first, I was really frightened. Can you imagine a man my size playing hopscotch? But you know what? It really got things going. We related. We really did.
Very good. Next week's assignment is to eat dinner together every night and tell me what changes in your family.
Do we get extra credit for dessert?
Excellent. Class dismissed.
Give your family everything. Give them your time. From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Darwin's theory suggests that life evolves through a series of chance adaptations, that life evolves from the simple to the complex, and that competition advances life better than cooperation. According to the scientists we talked to, all three of these ideas can be called into question. Why does that matter? It matters because who we are as human beings matters a great deal. Are we basically the material in our bodies? That's the worldview Darwin's theory suggests. Life is nothing more than interconnected chemical reactions. An alternative is to believe that there is a spiritual component to life, to human life. It's to believe that there is a purpose for existence, that the universe was made for us and vice versa. And that worldview comes from seeing a God behind creation. Now, it may be a big leap to go from saying that Darwin's theory is incomplete to saying that God exists, but many scientists believe precisely that because of the powerful evidence of design in nature. When they look at the intricate interrelationships among living creatures and living systems, it's hard for them not to see an intelligent designer at work. I must say I find that very compelling. Faith in God is reasonable. Faith in God is something that holds up under the microscope and out among the galaxies. We have hard evidence from just about every branch of science of how skillfully and wisely everything has been put together. That's what I think. I'm Dwight Nelson. Join us next time for more of the evidence.